The impossible assignment. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the message on her datapad, reading it 3 times to make sure she understood correctly. The Galactic Linguistic Council, the most prestigious organization in known space, was rejecting her application. Again. While we appreciate Dr. Vasquez's enthusiasm, her credentials do not meet our standards. 23 documented languages is impressive for a human, but council members typically master hundreds. Furthermore, her theories about emotional linguistics lack scientific rigor. We wish her well in her future endeavors. Elena sat in her cramped apartment on Mars Colony 7, surrounded by books and languages most humans had never heard of. At 32 years old, she'd spent her entire adult life studying communication. She could speak Mandarin, Arabic, and Swahili. She'd learned the clicking languages of Earth's past. She'd even mastered 3 alien languages that most humans found impossible. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Her comm device chirped. An unknown number. Elena almost ignored it, probably another job rejection, but something made her answer. A holographic figure appeared above her desk. Not human. Not any species she recognized. The being was translucent, like living glass, with patterns of light moving through its body like thoughts made visible. Dr. Elena Vasquez? The voice came through her translator as a flat, emotionless sound. Yes. Who is this? I am Crystalline Envoy Thel 9 of the Lumini Collective. We have been observing your work. We have a problem that requires your specific expertise. Elena leaned forward. The Lumini were legendary, a species so advanced they rarely bothered with younger races. What kind of problem? We have been attempting to communicate with a species we call the Silent Ones for 47 years. Every method has failed. Every translator has given up. We believe you might succeed where others cannot. Why me? The council just rejected my application. I'm not even. Because you understand something the council does not, Thel 9 interrupted. That language is not merely words. It is connection. And the Silent Ones require connection of a kind that no one else has been able to provide. The Ship of Broken Voices. 3 days later, Elena stood aboard the Harmony, a Lumini research vessel that existed in dimensions she couldn't quite perceive. The ship felt alive, humming with frequencies that made her teeth ache and her heart race. The Silent Ones were kept in what the Lumini called a preservation chamber, a massive space where 17 beings floated in individual containment fields. They looked almost human, but not quite. Their skin had a faint silver shimmer. Their eyes were larger, darker, holding depths that seemed to go on forever. And they didn't make a sound. We found them on a dying world, Thel 9 explained, his glass-like form refracting the chamber's light into rainbows. Their entire civilization was collapsing. We saved these 17, but we cannot communicate with them. They do not respond to any linguistic protocol. They do not speak, do not gesture, do not react to any stimulus we provide. Elena moved closer to the nearest containment field. Inside, a female Silent One, Elena decided to think of her as female based on general body structure, floated with her eyes closed. Her face was peaceful, but there was something else there. Something that made Elena's chest ache. They look sad, Elena said quietly. Sad? Thel 9's patterns flickered with confusion. We have detected no emotional markers. Their biological readings are stable. No, look at her face. The way her mouth is set. The tension in her shoulders. She's not peaceful. She's grieving. Elena pressed her hand against the containment field. The Silent One's eyes opened slowly, meeting Elena's gaze. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Silent One's hand moved, pressing against the field from the inside, matching Elena's position exactly. Thel 9's patterns brightened with excitement. Remarkable. She has never responded before. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Elena said, but her heart was pounding. I just looked at her. The first word. Elena spent the next week in the preservation chamber. She brought no equipment, no translation devices, no linguistic protocols. She simply sat near the silent ones and observed. The Lumini researchers thought she was wasting time. They monitored her constantly, recording everything, analyzing her biological responses, searching for the secret they assumed she must be using. But Elena wasn't using any secret. She was doing what she'd always done best, paying attention to the things everyone else ignored. She noticed that when the female silent one was distressed, her breathing changed in subtle patterns. She noticed that the male in the next containment field would shift position whenever the female showed signs of agitation, as if trying to comfort her despite the barrier between them. Most importantly, she noticed that the silent ones were constantly communicating. Just not with sounds. On the 8th day, Elena made a request that shocked everyone. Turn off the containment fields. Thel-9's patterns turned sharp red. Impossible. We do not know if they are dangerous. We do not know if they can survive outside the preservation environment. They're not dangerous. And they're dying in there. Not physically, their bodies are fine. But they're dying inside because you've separated them from each other. We cannot risk. Then risk one, Elena interrupted. Let one out. Let me try to communicate face to face. If I'm wrong, you can put them back. But if I'm right, you'll have been torturing 17 beings for 47 years because you were too afraid to trust them. The words hit harder than Elena intended. Thel-9's patterns flickered through colors she'd never seen before. Finally, he spoke, 1 hour. If you cannot establish communication in 1 hour, we restore the containment fields. The silent language. They released the female silent one first. She collapsed immediately, her legs unable to support her after years of floating. Elena caught her, feeling the being's weight, her warmth, her trembling. The silent one looked up at Elena with those deep, dark eyes. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Tears began streaming down her face. Elena's training told her to step back, to maintain professional distance. But her instincts, the ones the Linguistic Council had called unscientific, told her something different. She pulled the silent one into a hug. The being went rigid with shock. Then, slowly, her arms came up, wrapping around Elena with desperate strength. She pressed her face against Elena's shoulder and began to shake with silent sobs. And Elena understood. They're not silent by choice, she said, looking up at Thel-9. They lost their voices. Whatever destroyed their world, it took their ability to speak. They've been trapped here, unable to tell you, unable to communicate, watching you study them like specimens. She looked down at the being in her arms. But they can still feel. They can still connect. They're not a linguistic puzzle to solve. They're people who've lost everything and just need someone to see them. The silent one pulled back slightly, looking at Elena with an expression of pure gratitude. Then she did something unexpected. She placed her hand over Elena's heart, then moved it to her own heart. The gesture was simple, universal, older than language. I see you. Do you see me? Elena nodded, tears in her own eyes. I see you. I see all of you. The real translation. Over the next month, Elena didn't teach the silent ones to speak. Instead, she learned their language, a language of touch, of gesture, of shared emotion that didn't require words. She discovered that each silent one had a unique pattern of movement that identified them to the others. Like names, but expressed through the body. She learned that they could communicate complex ideas through the speed of their breathing, the angle of their head, the warmth of their skin. They taught her their history through shared dreams, another ability they had that required no words. Elena would sleep near them and wake with memories that weren't hers. Cities of silver light. Songs that resonated in bones rather than ears. A disaster that came from the sky, a weapon that specifically targeted their vocal cords, leaving them alive but unable to cry for help. They had survived genocide not because they were rescued, but because the attackers thought they had killed everyone. The silent ones had remained silent not by choice, but because making sound brought pain so intense it felt like dying. The Lumini had saved them. But in trying to study them, to catalog them, to understand them through data and analysis, they had added another layer of trauma to beings who had already lost everything. Elena's breakthrough came when she stopped trying to make the silent ones fit into existing linguistic models and instead proposed something radical, that they represented a completely new category of communication. One based not on transferring information, but on sharing existence. She called it presence linguistics, the idea that some beings communicate primarily through proximity, through the simple act of being together, through emotional resonance that transcends words. The Linguistic Council, of course, rejected her paper. Too emotional. Too unscientific. Too human. But the silent ones understood. And that was enough. The choice. 6 months after Elena's arrival, Thel 9 called her to the bridge. His patterns were dim, thoughtful. Dr. Vasquez, we have received your final report. The council has reviewed your findings regarding the silent ones. Elena braced herself for another rejection. They have decided, Thel 9 continued, that your methods are too unconventional to be considered valid linguistic research. They recommend the silent ones be transferred to a standard refugee facility where they can be processed according to established protocols. No. Elena's voice was flat. That would destroy them. They're finally healing. They're finally connecting again. You can't separate them now. The decision has been made. Unless. Thel 9's patterns shifted, unless someone takes legal responsibility for them. Someone willing to remain with them, to serve as their permanent advocate and translator. Elena looked through the viewport at the chamber where 17 beings were, for the first time in 47 years, sitting together, touching, sharing space. One of them, the female she'd first connected with, looked up as if sensing Elena's gaze. She placed her hand over her heart, then extended it toward Elena. I see you. I'll do it, Elena said. I'll stay with them. You understand this means giving up any chance at traditional recognition? The council will never accept your work. You'll be labeled a failure, someone who chose emotion over science. Elena smiled. The council doesn't understand that emotion is science. That connection is the oldest language we have. Let them call me a failure. The silent ones know the truth. The symphony of presence. The new beginning. The facility on the edge of human space was nothing like the Lumini ship. It was a converted mining station, rough, industrial, cold. But it was theirs. Elena watched the 17 silent ones explore their new home, their movements gradually losing the hesitation that years of containment had created. They moved as a group, never separating by more than a few meters, their connection to each other visible in every synchronized breath, every shared glance. The female Elena had first connected with, whom Elena had started calling Nova, because her movements reminded Elena of exploding stars, approached and took Elena's hand. Her skin was warm, her grip gentle but firm. She looked at Elena with those deep eyes and made a gesture, hand to heart, then sweeping outward. Thank you for bringing us home. This isn't your home, Elena said softly, knowing Nova would understand the emotional content if not the words. Your home is gone. But maybe we can build something new together. Nova tilted her head, considering. Then she did something remarkable. She placed Elena's hand over her own heart, let Elena feel the rhythm there. Then she placed her hand over Elena's heart, feeling the different rhythm, the human pattern that was faster, less steady. 2 rhythms. Different but together. Nova smiled, the first smile Elena had seen from any of the silent ones, and Elena understood. Home wasn't a place. It was the people you carried with you. The students who wouldn't listen. 3 months into their new life, Elena received a message from Earth. A university wanted to send researchers to study the silent ones. They promised funding, resources, advanced equipment. All Elena had to do was give them access. She rejected the request immediately. 2 weeks later, 5 graduate students showed up anyway. They had managed to get travel permits through bureaucratic channels Elena didn't understand and didn't care about. They arrived with scanning equipment, cameras, and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Dr. Vasquez. The lead student, a young woman named Dr. Chen, extended her hand enthusiastically. We're so excited to finally study the silent ones properly. Your emotional approach was a nice first step, but now it's time for real science. Elena didn't shake her hand. Real science? Quantitative analysis. Neural mapping. Linguistic pattern recognition. The things that actually matter in xenolinguistics. Behind Elena, the silent ones had gathered. Not threateningly, they were incapable of aggression, but protectively. Nova stepped forward, placing herself between Elena and the newcomers. Dr. Chen pulled out a scanning device. Fascinating. She's exhibiting protective behavior despite having no vocal capacity to warn us. The neural pathways must compensate through. Nova moved so fast that even Elena was surprised. She placed her hand over the scanner, and suddenly Dr. Chen gasped, dropping the device. Her eyes went wide, tears streaming down her face. What was that? Dr. Chen whispered. I felt everything. Her fear, her loss, her. She looked at Nova with new understanding. You're not silent because you can't speak. You're silent because it hurts to make sound. Because someone weaponized your voices against you. Nova nodded slowly, then gestured to the other students. One by one, they approached. One by one, she touched them, sharing not words but experience. Emotional memory that bypassed language entirely. When it was over, all 5 students were sitting on the floor, tears in their eyes, their expensive equipment forgotten. I'm sorry, Dr. Chen said, looking up at Elena. We came here thinking we were going to study primitive beings who needed our help understanding themselves. We were idiots. Elena knelt beside her. You were researchers doing what you were trained to do. But the silent ones are teaching us something the universities don't, that understanding isn't about collecting data. It's about being willing to feel what others feel. The message from the council. 6 months after Elena had chosen to stay with the silent ones, the Galactic Linguistic Council sent an official delegation. They arrived on a massive ship that made the converted mining station look like a toy. Ambassador Quelm, a being whose species Elena had never encountered, materialized in the station's main corridor. He was tall, composed, radiating the kind of authority that came from speaking for civilizations. Dr. Vasquez, he said, his translator rendering his voice in perfect, emotionless standard. The council has been monitoring your work. We have concerns. I'm not doing work, Elena said calmly. I'm living with friends. You are harboring 17 beings whose communication methods violate 3 established protocols. You have rejected legitimate research opportunities. Most concerning, you have been teaching them techniques that could be considered linguistic contamination. Contamination? Elena felt anger rising. I've been helping them heal. You have been imposing human emotional constructs onto beings who may not naturally possess them. You have created a dependency where they see you as necessary for their well-being. This is the opposite of proper xenolinguistic practice. Before Elena could respond, Nova stepped forward. She looked at Quelm with those deep, dark eyes. Then she did something that made everyone freeze. She spoke. Not with words. But with sound, a low, humming vibration that seemed to resonate in everyone's bones. It was beautiful and terrible, filled with such profound sadness that even Quelm took a step back. The sound lasted only 3 seconds. Then Nova touched her throat, and Elena saw the pain flicker across her face. Speaking hurt. It would always hurt. But she had chosen to do it anyway. For Elena. She's saying. Elena's voice broke. She's saying that I didn't contaminate them. They chose to connect with me. They chose to trust me. And if that's contamination, then the council's sterile, distant observation is worse than disease. The truth about understanding. Quelm was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he asked, "May I approach her?" Elena looked at Nova, who nodded slightly. Quelm moved closer, his movements careful, respectful. "Silent One," he said through his translator, "I need to understand. How can communication exist without language?" Nova looked at Elena, a question in her eyes. Elena nodded. What happened next would change xenolinguistics forever. Nova touched Quelm's hand, just a simple touch, skin to skin. And suddenly the ambassador went rigid, his entire body trembling. When Nova released him 5 seconds later, he staggered backward, his translator making sounds Elena had never heard before. "Sounds like crying." "I felt it," Quelm whispered. "Not words. Not concepts. Pure experience. The moment their world ended. The moment they realized they would never sing again. The moment Dr. Vasquez showed them they could still connect, still matter, still be whole." He looked at Elena with what might have been awe. "You didn't teach them language. You taught them hope." "No," Elena said. "They taught me. Everything the council thinks matters, vocabulary, grammar, syntax, is just the surface. These beings communicate at a level deeper than words. They share existence itself. And if we're too afraid to experience that, too committed to our protocols and our distance, then we're the ones who are truly silent." The new protocol. 3 months later, the Galactic Linguistic Council issued its most controversial decision in recorded history. They created a new category of communication, presence linguistics. And they named Elena Vasquez as its founding researcher. But Elena didn't go back to the academic world. She stayed on the mining station with the 17 Silent Ones, helping them heal, learning their language of touch and breath and shared emotion. Other beings started arriving. Not to study the Silent Ones, but to learn from them. Refugees from a dozen wars who had lost their voices in different ways. Traumatized beings who couldn't speak their pain but could feel it shared. People who had spent their lives thinking they were broken because they didn't communicate the normal way. The station became something unprecedented, a place where silence was respected, where presence mattered more than words, where beings could connect without the pressure of language. The final message. 5 years after Elena first met the Silent Ones, she received a message from the Linguistic Council. They wanted to give her an award, recognize her groundbreaking work, bring her back to give lectures at the most prestigious universities. Elena read the message while Nova sat beside her, their hands linked in the comfortable silence they'd built together. "They want me to come explain what we do here," Elena said. "Turn it into something they can teach in classrooms." Nova squeezed her hand gently. Then she did something she'd only done a few times since that first painful word. She hummed, that deep, resonant sound that said more than language ever could. It meant, "Stay. Please stay. This is where you belong." Elena deleted the message. Because she'd learned something in her 5 years with the Silent Ones. Something more valuable than any award, any recognition, any academic position. She'd learned that the most profound communication happens in the spaces between words. In the touch of a hand. In the sharing of breath. In the simple act of sitting together in comfortable silence, understanding that presence is its own language. She'd learned that being seen, truly seen, was worth more than being famous. And she'd learned that sometimes the people who change the world are the ones who choose to stay small, to stay close, to stay with the beings who need them rather than the institutions that want to use them. Epilogue, the new translator. 20 years later, a young linguist named Marcus arrived at the station. He'd heard legends about Dr. Vasquez and the Silent Ones. He'd come to learn the impossible language, to unlock the secrets that would make him famous. He found Elena, now in her 50s, her hair gray, her hands marked with the wear of decades, sitting in the garden with a group of Silent Ones. They were simply existing together, breathing in rhythm, hands occasionally touching, sharing space without words. "Dr. Vasquez?" Marcus approached nervously. "I'm here to study." Nova, now visibly older but still graceful, stood and approached him. She looked at him with those ageless eyes. Then she placed her hand over his heart and waited. Marcus froze, uncertain. Elena watched, curious to see what he would do. Slowly, Marcus placed his hand over Nova's heart. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his eyes widened as he felt her heartbeat, her warmth, her presence. "Oh," he whispered. "It's not about learning to speak their language. It's about learning to be present in their silence." Elena smiled. "Maybe you'll understand after all." Because that was the secret the council had never grasped. That some languages couldn't be taught in classrooms or documented in papers. They could only be experienced, one heartbeat at a time, one touch at a time, one moment of genuine presence at a time. And in a galaxy that had spent millennia trying to catalog every language, measure every communication method, and reduce connection to data points, the Silent Ones had taught Elena the most important lesson. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. The end.